What does Beijing's new national security law for Hong Kong cover, and who should worry? The possibility of new security bodies in the city, or one-size-fits-all charges being used against activists are among issues pumping concern. Despite the central government's move, local leadership is still expected to craft their own national security law under the Basic Laws Article 23. In a political bombshell that carries potentially drastic implications for Hong Kong, Beijing has decided to bypass the Legislative Council and craft a new national security law tailor-made for the city. The new law was introduced after almost a year of increasingly violent anti-government protests, and has sparked concerns over the fate of the one country, two systems blueprint that has guided Hong Kong since the handover. Here are the answers to key questions. Number 1. What is the draft legislation about? According to the resolutions put forward at the National People's Congress (NPC) on Friday, the new law is intended to prevent, stop, and punish acts in Hong Kong that threaten national security, and encompasses secessionist and subversive activities, as well as foreign interference and terrorism. The NPC also highlighted the responsibility of Hong Kong's leaders to protect national security by launching promotional and education programs on the matter, prohibiting acts that threaten national security, and submitting reports to the central government on a regular basis. Number 2. Who is going to enforce the law? That remains unclear, but the resolution has specified that relevant Beijing authorities overseeing national security can set up organizations in Hong Kong if necessary. Implying mainland agents would have enforcement powers within the city. Yip Kok Him, a local NPC deputy, defended the potential necessity of mainland agents when foreign interference is involved. It is not something Hong Kong departments can tackle on their own, he said. Pro-establishment heavyweights, including former Basic Law Committee Vice Chairwoman Elsie Lam OIC, have said that even if mainland agencies were established in the city, their staff would still be bound by local laws. Number 3. How will the legislations be promulgated, and when is it likely to happen? Under Article 18 of the Basic Law, national laws can only be applied in Hong Kong if they are listed in Annex 3 of the mini constitutions and related to defense, foreign affairs, or other matters outside the limits of the city autonomy. The national laws would then either be promulgated, taking effect automatically, or adopted through local legislation. Two systems one country, two system, one country, two systems, as it would allow Beijing to install a new and unregulated legal system in Hong Kong. Veteran Democrat Lee Cheuk-yan has expressed fear that crimes such as subversions could be used arbitrarily as one-size-fits-all charge against activists. He pointed to how Beijing has used existing national security laws to clamp down on mainland dissidents, such as the late Nobel Peace Prize laureate Liu Xiaobo, who was sentenced to 11 years in prison in 2009 for inciting subversion. Several international business chambers, including the American Chambers of Commerce in the city, have warned the legislations would put the city's positions as a global financial hub in jeopardy. Amnesty International also warned this attempt to bulldoze through repressive security regulations poses a glassy, existential threat to the rule of law in Hong Kong and is an ominous moment for human rights in the city. Number 5. Why hasn't Hong Kong enacted its own national security law since the handover? Article 23 of the Basic Law, the city's mini constitutions requires the Hong Kong government to enact national security legislations on its own. By an attempt to legislate, Article 23 in 2003 was abandoned after an estimate 500,000 people took to the streets against it, fearing it would curb their rights and freedoms. The Hong Kong government has since steered clear of reintroducing the legislations with incumbent leaders Carrie Lam Chang-yuen or reiterating a favorable environment was needed to tackle the controversial issue. Number 6. Why is Beijing pressing ahead with a national security law knowing it would risk a backlash? The new law comes almost a year after unprecedented social unrest triggered by the now withdrawn extradition bill and accompanied by increasingly violent anti-government protests. And erupted in Hong Kong last June, politicians and demonstrators have also lobbied for international support via overseas visits and online campaigns, drawing the eye of Beijing, which is as a form of foreign interference. In November, the United States signed into law the Human Rights and Democracy Act, which would allow Washington to suspend Hong Kong's special trading status based on an annual certification by the U.S. State Department, which determines whether the city retains a sufficient degree of autonomy under the one country, two systems framework. The U.S. amid an increasingly tense relationship with Beijing has until the end of this month to make that decision for the first time. In Hong Kong, the city's pro-democracy bloc which scored a landslide victory in the district council elections in November, is mounting a 35-plus campaign to seize control of the 30-member legislative in the September polls and block all bills put forth by the government. It is against that backdrop that Beijing decided to fire the preemptive shot, declaring it had to step in given how difficult it would be for the local government to enact the long overdue law on its own amid the worsening situation. Number 7. Does Hong Kong still need to draft its own national security legislation based on Article 23? The answer is yes. According to the MPC resolution, it's emphasized that the local administration still has a constitutional responsibility to enact Article 23 as soon as possible, and that the legislations cannot contradict the version being drafted by Beijing. Article 23 states that the national security law must prohibit acts of treason, secession, sedition, subversion against the Central People's Government, or theft of state secrets, as well as prevent political organizations or bodies of the region from establishing ties with foreign political organizations or bodies. The Beijing declared law bans acts of secession, subversions, foreign interference, and lastly terrorism, an offense not covered in Article 23, implying that acts of treason, sedition, and theft of state secrets remain outstanding items that will still need to be addressed. Professor Simon Yong I. Man, Associate Dean, Research of the University of Hong Kong's Law School, described the promulgations of the national security law as alarming, saying it undermined the key legislature repeatedly said its security law was different from Article 23. A total substitution of Article 23 would mean an amendment of the basic law as well, which involves complicated procedures. A MPC deputy who spoke on condition of anonymity said. Number 8. Who may be affected by the new law? Hong Kong has long been the only place on Chinese soil to organize a large-scale annual vigil commemorating the Tiananmen Square crackdown in 1989. The regatta organizes the Hong Kong Alliance in support of patriotic democratic movements, and China has over the years called for the end of one-party rule. The city's activists are pessimistic. The alliance will be allowed to exist under the proposed national security law. Some slogans, such as calls to end one-party rule in China, will be stepping on wet lines. lawmaker Tanya Chen, convener of the Borg, said there may be risks in supporting human rights activists in China who are jailed for subversion. She also warned the proposed law could also be used to bar opposition's activists from running in local elections. Will lawmakers and candidates who have chanted slogans be disqualified? Chen asked. The law would presumably also go against those who push a localist or a pro-independence line, superseding the lead for the city to look to common law. Some pundits have suggested the law could affect young activist Joel Wang Chi-feng and his Democratic Party. In recent years, both have led Hong Kong civil society's international lobbying efforts. Hong Kong U legal academic Yang also warned that the national security law would curtail the sponsorship of activities by foreign NGOs and governments.